They tried to erase me, but they forgot one thing: truth cannot be buried forever. The jacaranda trees painted the sidewalks of Phoenix with delicate lavender petals. Narina Sloan brushed a few stray blooms from her windshield before making her way to her parents' house. Sunday family dinners were tradition, but the simple text from her father, "Family dinner tonight, be here by 5," had felt oddly formal. As a doctoral candidate in molecular biology at Arizona State University, Narina had spent the past week immersed in her research, rarely checking her phone. Her work on targeted molecular delivery systems showed remarkable promise, with potential applications in cancer treatment and genetic disorders. It was the kind of breakthrough that had earned her the respect of her professors and the quiet resentment of her siblings. Perhaps this dinner was about her graduate applications, or Emerch's new job, or Zanea's wedding planning. Normal family matters. But when she arrived, something felt wrong. There was no food on the table, no smell of her mother's baked ziti or the familiar scent of store-bought Caesar salad dressing. Just silence and three people already seated as if they had been waiting. Her father didn't stand to hug her as he normally would. "You're late," he said, his voice carrying the cold edge she'd heard directed at others, but never at her. "Traffic on I-17?" Narina offered, still half smiling, scanning the room for a clue. She noticed the formal arrangement of the living room, her parents on the sofa, Emerch in the armchair usually reserved for guests. Zanea perched on the ottoman like she was ready to present a closing argument. Her mother stared down at folded hands. Emerch sat with a smug expression, like he'd just aced a test he hadn't studied for. Zanea looked away, Bikison. But there was something rehearsed in her posture, like she'd practiced this moment in front of a mirror. "Narina," her father said, "we need to talk, and we need you to sit down." That's when she knew something was wrong. She sat stiff-backed on the armchair closest to the window. The light behind her made their faces even harder to read, casting shadows that seemed to deepen the lines of judgment on their faces. "You've been taking money," Emerch said, skipping any build-up, "from Mom and Dad's retirement account." Narina blinked in confusion, her mind racing to make sense of the accusation. "What? That's absurd. I've never—" He slid a printed statement across the coffee table, a highlighted section circled in orange marker. "A withdrawal for $15,000 dated 3 weeks ago." Her stomach dropped as she recognized the poorly forged signature at the bottom, similar to hers, but with subtle differences only someone who knew her handwriting would notice. "I didn't do this," she started, but her father raised a hand, silencing her with the gesture he'd used throughout their childhood when he considered a matter settled. Zanea jumped in like she couldn't wait any longer, her words tumbling out with practiced precision. "And she's been seeing that married doctor. You know, the one who works at Banner Hospital, Dr. Richards." She leaned forward, voice dropping dramatically. "She tried to sleep with my fiancé, too. He told me everything. How you cornered him at the engagement party. How you suggested meeting at that hotel downtown." Narina couldn't breathe. Her hands gripped the fabric of her jeans as the floor seemed to tilt beneath her. "Are you serious right now? You think I would touch your fiancé or steal from our parents? This is insane. That's not even my signature." "Don't lie, Narina," her mother said softly, eyes still down, fingers twisting the gold band on her ring finger. "You've changed. We don't recognize who you've become. The late nights, the secretive phone calls. We've all noticed." "No one asked me," Narina said, louder than intended. "You're just sitting here throwing out accusations like they're facts." "Enough," her father said. "We had a long talk. We've made a decision." Then came the sentence that cracked the floor beneath her. "We're removing you from the family trust, and we think it's best you leave by tomorrow evening." Narina looked around the room at the walls with their family photos. at the spot where she used to curl up and read next to the fireplace. It didn't feel like her home anymore. 24 hours, Emerch said, satisfaction evident in his voice. We've already packed some of your things, Zanea added. The rest you can sort out tomorrow. Narina stood up, feeling like she was floating outside her body. She walked past them, past her mother, who wouldn't look at her, past Emerch and Zanaya, who watched her with cold eyes. On the way out, she caught her father by the trash bin in the garage. He was tossing something in her old family photo album. Seriously? She asked. He shrugged. Figured you wouldn't need this where you're going. She didn't cry. Not then. Her legs carried her out to the car. She drove aimlessly, fingers trembling on the steering wheel. Narina ended up in a motel off Van Buren Road, one of those places where the curtains don't fully close and the AC unit buzzes like it's trying to escape the wall. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. No tears, just silence. This wasn't the first time Emerch had taken credit for her work, or Zanea had spread rumors about her. Assassin. Throughout their childhood, Emerch had consistently copied her assignments, claimed her ideas as his own, and somehow ended up receiving praise for his innovations. When she was 16, he had presented her science fair project as his own after sabotaging hers. Their parents had framed his certificate. Zanaya, 3 years older, had always resented Narina's close relationship with their grandmother. Grandma only spends time with you because she feels sorry for you, she'd once said within earshot of everyone at a family gathering. What Zanea didn't know was that Grandma Jr. had secretly left Narina her wedding ring, a simple gold band with a sapphire center, telling her, "You see people for who they are, not what they want from you." A week after Grandma died, Zanea had announced she would use Grandma's ring as her something old for the wedding. No one corrected her. Narina had stayed quiet, the real ring hidden in a hollowed-out book in her apartment. Then she felt it a deep pull in her stomach. Not pain exactly, but a weight she hadn't noticed before. She'd missed her period. After confirming her pregnancy with a test from the gas station, Narina sat at the small motel table, the pregnancy test box still open beside her. She whispered to the tiny life inside her, "You were the only truth they couldn't erase." She reached for her phone and scrolled through her contacts. She tried calling Sarah, her lab partner, but the conversation was awkward. Sarah had already heard things from Zanea and made an excuse to hang up quickly. 2 more friends responded similarly. With trembling fingers, she called Professor Winters, her doctoral advisor. "Dr. Winters, it's Narina Sloan. I need to explain something." To her relief, he listened. He didn't immediately judge or condemn her. When she finished explaining her situation, leaving out the pregnancy, there was a long pause. "Narina, I've known you for 4 years. You're one of my most promising students. Whatever is happening with your family, your work in my lab is secure. Take a few days, then come see me, and we'll figure out next steps." The call ended, and Narina felt a small thread of hope in the chaos. The next morning, her phone vibrated with a text from an unsaved number. "I heard what happened. I'm in the area. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here." Camden Ross, a fellow researcher from the university lab. They had worked adjacent projects for nearly a year, occasionally consulting on each other's work, but never socializing outside the lab. She was surprised he had her number. She hesitated, then replied, "How did you find out? Dr. Winters mentioned you might need some support. He didn't give details, just said you were going through something difficult." 2 hours later, they met at a small diner with cracked vinyl booths and windows that hadn't been washed properly in years. Camden looked the same as he did in the lab study, thoughtful, with observant eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "I don't want to intrude," he said after they ordered coffee. But I know what it's like when family suddenly isn't there anymore. There was no pity in his voice, just understanding. Something in Narina relaxed slightly. I'm pregnant, she said, the words escaping before she could reconsider. Camden didn't flinch. He reached for a paper napkin, grabbed a pen from his jacket pocket, and scribbled something, then slid it across the table. One word, together. She stared at it like it was a language she hadn't seen in years. I don't want to run, he said. Not from this. Not from you. Camden's apartment wasn't luxurious 2 rooms, bare walls. A coffee maker that grumbled louder than it brewed, but it became a sanctuary. He cleared space for her things and gave her the bedroom while he took the pull-out couch. No expectations. No pressure. It's just a place to land, he told her, until you figure out what's next. What was next began to take shape when Dr. Winters arranged for Narina to continue her research in a smaller lab on campus. Her doctoral work wouldn't be interrupted, and the position came with a modest stipend that could cover her basic needs. Your thesis on targeted molecular delivery systems has significant potential, Dr. Winters told her. Don't let personal setbacks derail your scientific contributions. At 12 weeks pregnant, Narina registered at a women's clinic under the name Elena Mason. It wasn't the first name she'd thought of, but it came easily. Elena sounded like someone no one would be looking for, someone no one had erased. The nurse didn't ask many questions, just took her vitals, scheduled a follow-up, and handed her a printout about prenatal nutrition with a smile that didn't feel rehearsed. No family insurance, no emergency contact, just her, a clipboard, and the silent promise that she would figure this out. Camden never hovered. He didn't offer to fix things. He just made sure she ate, brought her backup pens when she was working late, and sometimes sat in the corner reading quietly while she worked. Their arrangement was practical, built on mutual respect rather than romance or obligation. One evening, over takeout and soft jazz playing from his phone, Camden told her about his own family. Old money from the Northeast, he said. Vineyards and biotech patents, and expectations thicker than blood. They wanted me to marry the right girl, invest in the right projects, say the right things at the right galas. Why did you leave? Narina asked. Because they tried to build me in their image, he said, his voice quiet but firm. I'd rather help someone build something real. That night, they made a quiet pact. No going back, no calling her family, no hoping they'd come around. Over the next few months, Narina's pregnancy progressed as she dove deeper into her research. The molecular delivery system she had been developing showed promising results for targeted drug delivery, potentially revolutionizing treatment for several conditions. This could be more than a dissertation, Dr. Winter said after reviewing her latest results. This could be the foundation for something significant. The idea took root. With Dr. Winter's encouragement, Narina began researching grant programs, legal frameworks, and basic startup structures at the downtown library in Phoenix. Not the glamorous part with coffee shops and murals, but the older wing, where the computer still hummed and every desk wobbled slightly to the left. She filed for an LLC under the name Sawline Bio. It was simple. It stood for Saul, as in soul, and line, like lineage. Only now the line would begin with her, Aoi. But launching a biotech startup while visibly pregnant proved challenging in ways she hadn't anticipated. At a pitch event for early-stage companies, Narina presented her research confidently, only to be dismissed by an investor who said, "Impressive resume, but we've already had our fill of single pregnant founders trying to prove a point." The rejection stung, but it also hardened her resolve. Outside the venue, Camden waited patiently. He didn't offer empty reassurances, just quiet solidarity. You know what really bothers me, she told him as they walked back to the car. That guy assumed I'm trying to prove a point instead of, I don't know, trying to advance medical science. People see what they expect to see, Camden replied. Your job isn't to change their vision, it's to build something so undeniable they have to acknowledge it. Their relationship evolved gradually, not with grand declarations or dramatic shifts, but with small moments of connection. Camden accompanying her to prenatal appointments, Narina noticing how he organized his books by subject rather than author, the way they developed a shorthand for communicating about research problems. When Narina felt the first flutters of movement in her womb, Camden was there, his hand resting gently on her belly, his expression one of wonder rather than fear. I think there might be two, the ultrasound technician said during the 20-week scan. See here, two distinct heartbeats. Twins. The news left Narina breathless. Not just one new life to protect and nurture, but two. That evening, she received a voicemail from a number she didn't recognize. She pressed play, her breath catching more from reflex than fear. Her mother's voice came through, clipped and cold. If you're still alive somewhere, stay gone. Zanea is pregnant now. We don't need your drama. That was it. No greeting, no goodbye. Narina didn't cry. She saved the voicemail and filed it under a folder labeled Proof. Not for legal use, just to remind herself, so that years from now, if she ever doubted whether walking away had been right, she could play it once and remember exactly what she'd left behind. By her third trimester, Narina had secured a small grant for Sawline Bio through a Women in STEM initiative. It wasn't enough to launch a full-scale operation, but it provided resources for preliminary research and development. She had just finished meeting with a potential manufacturing partner when she saw a glossy brochure for a healthcare conference featuring Zanea's face alongside the tagline, Pioneering Molecular Delivery Systems for Underserved Communities. Narina froze. The description that followed outlined her research almost verbatim. The Zanea Sloan Foundation is proud to announce groundbreaking developments in targeted drug delivery systems. Her hands shook as she read further. Not only had Zanea taken credit for her research, but she had established a foundation using it to build her public image as a healthcare innovator and philanthropist. This isn't right, Camden said when she showed him the brochure later. She's literally stolen your intellectual property. Narina paced the small apartment, one hand supporting her lower back. The worst part is, I don't even know how she got the details. My dissertation isn't published yet. That evening, Camden seemed unusually quiet. He sat at the kitchen table, turning his coffee mug slowly. There's something I need to tell you, he finally said. My mother. She's friends with someone in your family. Your Aunt Regina, I think. They went to school together. Still talk. Narina's mouth went dry. And you didn't think to mention that. I didn't want to lose you, he admitted. It was stupid, I know, but I've never contacted her about you or shared anything. She stood up, took a breath, and said, No lies, no alliances with ghosts from my past. If I move forward, it's clean. He didn't defend himself. He just nodded, pulled out his phone, and one by one deleted every contact tied to that part of his world. She watched him do it, then sat back down. We need to document everything, she said. Every research note, every timestamp, every piece of evidence that proves this work is mine. The twins arrived on a stormy October night, a boy and a girl, Leo and Leora, small but healthy. The delivery was difficult, but Narina emerged from it with a new kind of strength. Camden was there through it all, his steady presence a cornerstone in the foundation of their new family. In the months that followed, Narina balanced motherhood with building her company. Sawline Bio secured additional funding, and she rebranded it as Phoenix Biotech, a name that symbolized rebirth from ashes. The Regional Medical Innovations Conference was being held at a downtown hotel, the kind with marble floors and triple lattes that cost more than lunch. Camden parked a few blocks down so Narina could walk in alone. It wasn't about dramatics. It was about reclaiming the space her name had once been erased from. Right outside the main conference hall stood a 10-foot-tall banner, silk-screened and perfectly lit, that read Women Leading the Future of Health, sponsored by the Zenaya Sloan Foundation. And right there, front and center, was Zenaya's face, head tilted slightly, eyes modest, arms crossed like she knew exactly how to pose for legacy. Below that, quotes pulled word for word from Narina's thesis abstract. No attribution, no footnote, no mention of Phoenix Biotech. The moderator called the next speaker to the microphone. Narina Sloan, PhD candidate and founder of Phoenix Biotech. Narina walked past the banner without touching it, without looking back. Inside, the panel sat neatly arranged on stage. Zania was absent, of course. She only lent her face, never her presence, unless there was applause waiting. As Narina stepped up to the lectern, the room hushed. She clicked through her presentation methodically, showcasing the data, the research methodology, and crucially, the time-stamped documentation of her work. I wasn't invited to this panel, she said steadily, but I built the science you're funding, not with a dynasty, not with a PR firm, but with research that began 4 years ago in Dr. Winters's lab at ASU. She ended with the final slide, a time-stamped email thread showing the first draft of her thesis, years before the foundation was created. When she stepped down, the room erupted in murmurs. Camden met her at the foot of the stage, phone in hand. He'd been recording, already uploading, already captioned. The right twin built it. They made it to the car just as the sun dipped low, casting everything in a warm golden light. But the warmth vanished when they saw the windshield spray-painted in red. Backstabber, trash mom, shame to the name. Under the windshield wiper was an envelope with Narina's name in perfect cursive. Inside, a cease and desist letter accusing her of defamation, demanding takedown of all posts, threatening to sue. At the bottom, Zenaya's signature, flowing and elegant, just like everything about her public persona. Camden's face flushed with fury. Do you want me to call the police? Narina didn't answer immediately. She surveyed the damage with a clinical detachment that surprised even her. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a folder thicker than Zenaya's. Heavier. Inside, screenshots of time-stamped research files, email threads with advisors, grant receipts, statements from lab assistants, copies of old mentorship logs, all with her name clearly attached. Let her try, Narina said calmly. Let her swing first. And that night, after putting the twins to bed, Narina and Camden sat at their kitchen table, laptops open, planning their response. We need legal representation, Camden said. Someone who specializes in intellectual property, and someone who won't be intimidated by the Sloan name, Narina added. My family has connections throughout Phoenix. Dr. Winters provided a referral to Renee Tanner, an intellectual property attorney with a reputation for handling high-profile academic disputes. Their initial meeting was promising. This is a clear case of intellectual property theft, Renee said, reviewing the documentation, the timestamps, the identical language, the research trail, it's all here, and the fact that your sister established a foundation based on your work that elevates this significantly. What about her cease and desist? Camden asked. A scare tactic. Renee dismissed it with a wave. Typical first move. We'll respond with our own letter and then we'll file suit. The decision to pursue legal action wasn't made lightly. Narina knew it would be expensive, time-consuming, and potentially damaging to Phoenix Biotech's reputation. But she also knew that without establishing clear ownership of her research, everything she had built remained vulnerable. "Are you sure about this?" Camden asked that evening as they prepared dinner. "It's going to be brutal. They'll try to discredit you, bring up the family split." "I know," Narina said, chopping vegetables with precise, measured strokes. "But I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it because the science matters. The truth matters." The lawsuit dragged on for nearly 8 months. Zania's legal team, funded by the family trust, employed every delay tactic possible, hoping to exhaust Narina's limited resources. But what they hadn't counted on was Dr. Winter's mobilizing support within the scientific community, or the pro bono legal team that took on Narina's case after her story gained traction in academic circles. During a particularly tense deposition, Zanaya's lawyer attempted to paint Narina as unstable and vindictive. "Isn't it true that you've been estranged from your family due to erratic behavior?" the lawyer asked. "No," Narina replied evenly. "I was removed from my family based on false accusations that conveniently coincided with my brother taking credit for my academic work and my sister establishing a foundation based on my research. Do you have any proof of these allegations?" Narina's lawyer slid a USB drive across the table. Recorded conversations between Zanaya Sloan, Emerch Sloan, and Regina Matthews discussing how to handle the Narina problem by removing her from the family and redirecting her research funding. The room fell silent. Zanaya's lawyer called for a recess. 2 weeks later, Narina received a settlement offer. Zanaya would acknowledge Narina's intellectual ownership, redirect foundation funds to Phoenix Biotech, and issue a public apology. In exchange, Narina would drop criminal charges. "It's a good offer," her lawyer advised. "You'd get recognition and resources without more months in court." Narina considered it carefully. "I'll accept, with one addition. I want documentation of exactly how my research was accessed and who was involved." The final hearing was scheduled on a Wednesday. The Phoenix courthouse buzzed with murmurs as Narina entered, Camden beside her, the twins with a babysitter at home. She wore the navy blazer her mother once said made her look too masculine for a daughter. She smiled while buttoning it that morning. Her mother had been right. It wasn't feminine, it was formidable. When Zanaya entered wearing a cream-sheath dress and unnecessary sunglasses, she faltered visibly upon seeing Camden. She hadn't expected him to stand by Narina. That was her mistake. The settlement was read into record, and the judge made it official. Narina Sloan was the rightful creator and owner of the molecular delivery system technology. The Zanaya Sloan Foundation would be restructured, with oversight from an independent board, to properly fund the work with appropriate attribution. As the crowd filed out, Narina noticed her parents seated at the back of the courtroom. Her father stared at his folded hands. Her mother looked frail, thin in a way that spoke of more than stress. They didn't approach her, and she didn't go to them. On the courthouse steps, a reporter called out, "Miss Sloan, is there anything you'd like to say to your family?" Narina paused just long enough for the hush to spread. "No," she said simply. "I already did in court." 3 months after the settlement, Phoenix Biotech had expanded into new lab space. The funding from the restructured foundation allowed Narina to hire a small team and accelerate development of their flagship product. She was reviewing clinical trial applications when her assistant knocked on her office door. "There's a woman here to see you," she said hesitantly. "She says she's your mother." Narina's hand stilled over the documents. "Did she give a name? Eleanor Sloan?" She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent. Narina closed her eyes briefly, centering herself. Send her in, please. Eleanor Sloane had always been poised, perfectly put together. The woman who entered Narina's office was a shadow of that image, thin, pale, with a silk scarf tied neatly over what appeared to be hair loss from chemotherapy. Narina, she said, her voice softer than Narina remembered. Thank you for seeing me. What can I do for you, Mrs. Sloane? Narina kept her tone professional, neither warm nor cold. Eleanor winced slightly at the formality. I have ovarian cancer, stage 4. The doctors say. Well, it doesn't matter what they say. She took a breath. I wanted to see you before I couldn't anymore. Narina's professional facade cracked slightly. I'm sorry to hear that. I don't expect forgiveness, Eleanor continued. But I need you to know the truth. Emmerich and Zania planned it all. They convinced your father and me that you were unstable, that you'd stolen money. We believed them because it was easier than admitting they were jealous of you. Narina remained silent, processing. Your grandmother saw it, Eleanor said. She always said you were the one who inherited her eye for truth. That's why she left you the ring. Zanea took it from your apartment the day we sent you away. Narina's jaw tightened. Why are you telling me this now? Because dying has a way of burning away pretense, Eleanor replied. And because I hope whatever you've built is stronger than what we tried to destroy. After her mother left, Narina sat in silence for a long time. Then she called Camden. My mother has stage 4 ovarian cancer, she said when he answered, and I think I need to develop a better diagnostic tool. The ovarian cancer screening technology became Phoenix Biotech's priority project. Narina knew it wouldn't save her mother, but it might save others. She named the diagnostic protocol Eleanor's Window, not out of forgiveness, but acknowledgement. Camden supported her vision completely, taking on more childcare responsibilities as she worked longer hours. Their relationship had evolved into a partnership built on mutual respect and shared purpose. When he proposed, it was without fanfare, just a simple question asked while they sat on the porch watching the twins play in the yard. I'd like to make this official, he said, holding out a small box. Not because we need to, but because I want to. Inside was a simple band, nothing ostentatious. Narina slipped it on her finger and nodded. Yes, she said, for all the right reasons. Eleanor Sloane passed away 6 months later. Narina attended the funeral, standing at the back with Camden. Her father looked older, diminished. Emerge kept his distance. His wife and children clustered around him. Zanea didn't show. After the service, Narina's father approached her hesitantly. The house is being sold, he said, his voice rough with grief. Medical bills. I'm moving to a retirement community. Narina nodded, unsure what response he wanted. Your mother, he continued, struggling with the words. She told me what really happened, with the money, with everything. He looked at her directly for the first time. I failed you. It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was an acknowledgement. Yes, Narina said simply. You did. She didn't offer forgiveness, but she didn't walk away either. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt, but perhaps new, smaller pathways could be formed. A week later, a package arrived at Phoenix Biotech's office. Inside was her grandmother's sapphire ring and a note in her father's handwriting. This belongs with you. 5 years after being cast out from her family home, Narina stood in the backyard of the small house she and Camden had purchased. The twins, now in kindergarten, took turns patting dirt over citrus saplings they had planted together. Mommy, This one's Leo's tree, Leora said, wiping her brow like a tiny farmer. Leo nodded seriously, as if the roots themselves depended on his approval. Phoenix Biotech had grown into a respected player in the biomedical field. Eleanor's window had received FDA approval and was being implemented in clinics nationwide, with a special program for underserved communities. Narina had been invited to teach a graduate seminar at her alma mater, sharing not just scientific knowledge, but the messy, complicated path of innovation. Her students appreciated her honesty about the personal and professional challenges she'd faced. Her relationship with her father remained tentative, occasional phone calls, a shared meal once every few months. Emerch had moved to Chicago after his involvement in financial improprieties came to light. Zanea had retreated from public life, her foundation now properly acknowledging the source of its core technology. Camden's parents had eventually reached out, curious about the grandchildren they'd never met. After careful consideration, Narina and Camden had allowed a supervised visit, setting clear boundaries about respect and truthfulness. Life wasn't perfect, but it was authentic. They had built something real together, a family, a home, a legacy of work that mattered. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Narina and Camden sat under the pergola he had built, watching the stars emerge above the citrus trees. "Are you okay?" Camden asked, the question simple but laden with history. Narina considered it carefully, looking at the small grove they'd started, the way the swing creaked slightly in the breeze, the tiny shoe Leora had left by the planter. Then she looked down at her hands, stronger than before, lined from work, still faintly stained from the lab. "I'm not just okay," she said finally. "I'm exactly who I was meant to be." Camden reached for her hand, not gripping it tightly, just resting his fingers over hers, a quiet agreement. Like the trees they had planted, they had taken root in soil of their own choosing, growing toward a future they had built together. "They tried to erase me once," Narina thought as she gazed at their intertwined fingers. "But I didn't fight to be remembered. I built something too real to ignore. Irgistel."